After 10 hours of driving in the snow, my arthritis flaring up just to celebrate Christmas with my daughter, I got to her door and heard, "I really hope he doesn't make it." They laughed, mocking my sacrifices. Instead of a warm welcome, it was a heartbreaking betrayal. I quietly closed the door and left. And then, a real storm began. What happened next changed their lives forever. They will never forget it. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. My fingers, stiff from arthritis in the cold, fumbled on the doorknob. 10 hours on the road through the northern snow, white-knuckling the steering wheel while my joints screamed with every mile. The gift bags in my backseat had shifted during the treacherous drive, the wrapping paper crinkling like broken promises. Valerie's house glowed warm against the December dark. Christmas lights draped the porch railings, blinking red and gold, exactly like the ones I'd helped her hang 3 years ago when Richard's back was acting up again. The same excuse he used for everything. I raised my hand to knock, but I paused. Voices drifted through the thin door, Valerie's laugh mixing with Richard's deeper rumble. My heart lightened. They were home, safe, probably wondering where their old man was. I'd driven through a blizzard to be here. To hell with the arthritis. Nothing was going to stop me from spending Christmas with my daughter. "I honestly hope he doesn't make it." Valerie's voice cut through my thoughts like ice. My hand froze on the doorknob. "Come on, Val, he's your dad," Richard answered, but his tone was amused, not scolding. I know, but look at this weather. Maybe the roads are just too bad. We could actually have a Christmas without him hovering over us, asking if we need money, bringing those awful sugar cookies." Valerie's laugh again, lighter now. "Just us. No guilt trips about family togetherness." "The old man really lays it on thick," Richard agreed. "Always going on about his sacrifices, how he sold his business for you, like we asked him to." "Right? I never asked him to be my personal ATM. That was his choice." The cold seeped through my coat, settling deep in my chest. I'd been standing there maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like hours. The Christmas music playing inside, silver bells, suddenly sounded mocking. "Besides," Valerie continued, "he's getting older. These long drives aren't safe for him anymore. We're actually being responsible by wishing he'd stay home." "Very thoughtful of you," Richard said, and they both laughed. I stepped back, my boots crunching in the snow. The sound felt deafeningly loud, but the music and their conversation continued, uninterrupted. My car was 30 feet away, the engine ticking as it cooled, the exhaust still visible in the frigid air. 15 years. 15 years since the divorce, and I had built my entire life around Valerie. I sold Vance Industries, my life's work, and poured everything into her happiness. Her house, Richard's art supplies, her car payments, grocery money when things got tight. I had driven through blizzards, canceled trips, ignored my own health, all because I thought family meant everything to her too. My phone vibrated. A text from Valerie. "Drive safe if you're coming, Dad. Weather looks bad." I stared at the screen, then at the warm windows where shadows moved behind the drawn curtains. She had sent me this while she was laughing about hoping I wouldn't arrive, while she was discussing my guilt trips and calling my homemade cookies awful. The gifts in my back seat suddenly felt like taunts. Expensive scarves for Valerie, art books for Richard that cost more than most people's car payments. I'd agonized over every purchase, wanting to show them how much they meant to me, how much I had given them over the years. 200,000, 300,000, I'd stopped counting after Valerie's wedding, when I'd paid for the whole thing because Richard's family couldn't contribute much. I had been honored to do it, honored to walk my daughter down the aisle and provide for her new family. I reached for my car door handle, the metal biting cold even through my gloves. The arthritis in my knees protested as I lowered myself into the driver's seat, but I barely noticed. Something inside my chest had shifted, something colder than the December air. I started the engine and pulled out of their driveway, slowly, carefully. No squealing tires, no dramatic exit. Just a quiet departure from a house where I had never really been welcome. In my rearview mirror, the Christmas lights grew smaller, then disappeared completely as I turned onto the main road. I wasn't heading home. Not yet. The highway stretched out ahead, dark and empty except for scattered snowflakes dancing in my headlights. For the first time in 15 years, I had nowhere I needed to be. No one was counting on me. No, No one was hoping I'd stay away. The radio was playing "I'll Be Home for Christmas," and I reached over and shut it off. The silence felt better. It felt like the beginning of something new. The wipers swept back and forth, clearing snow that was falling faster than they could handle. I took the long way home, avoiding the main highway, needing time to process what I had heard. My hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles turned white, the arthritis forgotten in the face of something far more painful. I hope he doesn't make it. Valerie's words echoed in my head with every sweep of the wipers. Left, right, I hope he doesn't make it. The rhythm became hypnotic, almost calming, as my mind began to work in a way it hadn't in years. By the time I reached my neighborhood, the initial shock had settled into something colder. My house was dark and silent at the end of Maple Street. The Christmas lights I'd hung along the gutters 2 weeks ago blinked faintly through the snow. The driveway needed plowing, but I left the car running as I stared at the place I'd called home for 20 years. Inside, the silence felt different than it had this morning. This morning, it had been temporary. The calm before joining the family for Christmas, now it felt permanent, final. I hung my coat carefully in the closet, the damp wool heavy in my hands. The gifts for Valerie and Richard were in bags by the door. Expensive scarves and art books that suddenly looked like monuments to my own stupidity. I walked around them as if they might bite. My study welcomed me with the familiar smells of leather and old paper. 20 years of business success lined these walls. Industry awards, photographs from grand openings, contracts that had made me wealthy enough to be generous. Too generous, apparently. The file cabinet slid open with a soft click. I pulled folder after folder, spreading documents across my desk like a general planning a campaign. My will. Dated last spring. Valerie Wilson, née Vance. Primary beneficiary. My life insurance policy, $2 million. Valerie Wilson, née Vance. Sole beneficiary. The bank statements told their own story. September, $3,000 transfer to Valerie. Emergency car repair. October, $5,000 roof leak. November, $2,500 Richard's art supplies, every month for 3 years, sometimes more. Before that, the down payment on the house, $75,000. Before that, the wedding, $40,000. Before that, college. I'd gifted her $20,000. I pulled out my calculator and started adding. The numbers grew larger than I'd even expected. A conservative estimate. $280,000 in 15 years, more than some people make in a lifetime. Handed over to a daughter who hoped I wouldn't show up for Christmas. The computer hummed to life, its blue glow illuminating the bank statements and investment portfolios. Everything pointed in the same direction, to Valerie. Every safety net I had built, every financial cushion, every inheritance plan. She was woven into my financial life like a thread in a fabric. A memory surfaced, sharp as the winter air. Valerie at 22, crying in my kitchen after graduation. Dad, I don't know how I'm going to pay off these student loans. My degree is useless. I'd written her a check for the full amount the next day. Don't you worry about it, honey. That's what fathers are for. Another memory. Valerie at 28, Richard fidgeting beside her in my living room. Dad, we found this perfect house, but the down payment. I'd transferred the money before they finished asking, and another. Valerie, just last month, voice tight on the phone. Richard's having trouble finding buyers for his paintings. We're just a little short this month. Another transfer. Another hope that this time they get on their own 2 feet. They never intended to get on their own 2 feet. Why would they, when standing took so much effort? I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled, watching the snow fall past my window. For the first time in years, my mind felt sharp in a way it hadn't since I sold Vance Industries. Strategic, calculating. This was a problem to be solved, not an emotion to be endured. Valerie wanted me out of her Christmas. Maybe she wanted me out permanently. The question was, how out did she really want me? My lawyer's contact information glowed on the phone screen. Robert Miller, estate planning specialist. We'd worked together for years, updating wills, managing trusts, securing Valerie's future. Tomorrow was Christmas Day, but some conversations couldn't wait. I scrolled to his number and paused, my thumb hovering over the call button. Once I made this call, there was no going back to the man who'd driven through a blizzard with gifts in his back seat. Then again, That man didn't exist anymore. Christmas morning arrived with an unusual stillness, no excited calls from Valerie, no hurried plans to coordinate gift exchanges. I sat with my coffee, the documents from last night's review still scattered across my desk, and I waited. The silence felt productive now, like the calm before a carefully planned storm. My phone rang at exactly 10:17 a.m. Valerie's name glowed on the screen, accompanied by her smiling picture from last year's Christmas dinner. The irony was not lost on me. I let it ring 3 times before answering, just long enough to sound tired. "Dad?" Her voice held the perfect note of concern, but I could hear the rehearsed quality underneath it. "We were so worried when you didn't show up last night. Are you okay?" I paused, letting her worry hang in the air. "I'm sorry, honey. I should have called sooner, but..." I lowered my voice, adding just the right tremor. "I was in an accident." "What? Are you hurt?" The alarm in her voice sounded genuine, though I noted she didn't ask if I needed her to come. "Black ice on Mill Road? You know that curve by the old church? My car slid right into the guardrail." I described it calmly, like someone still processing the shock. "Nothing major, but they wanted to keep me in the hospital overnight for observation. Mild concussion, they said." "Oh my God!" Valerie's exclamation felt theatrical. "Dad, why didn't you call us? We could have come to the hospital." "I didn't want to ruin your Christmas Eve. Besides, I was pretty out of it." I heard Richard's voice in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. "The doctor said I was lucky. Could have been a lot worse. Is Richard there?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Yes, he's right here. We're both just so relieved you're all right." The quickness of her reply gave away her eagerness to loop Richard into the conversation, to share the burden of pretending to care. Richard's voice came on, probably on speakerphone now. "Arthur, man, that's terrible. Is your car totaled?" Interesting. His first question was about the car, not my well-being. "It's drivable, but it's got some front-end damage. I'll have to get it looked at after the holidays." "Well, the important thing is that you're safe," Valerie cut back in. "Are you sure you're okay? Do you need anything? We could bring over some food or..." No, I'm fine, just tired." I let my voice trail off slightly. "I think I just need to rest today. Maybe we can reschedule Christmas dinner for next week." The pause that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds too long. "Of course, Dad. Whatever you need. Your health is the most important thing. Richard and I were just saying how strange it felt without you here last night," she continued, but her tone had lightened considerably. Relief, poorly disguised. This worry? It makes sense now. You should definitely rest." "I will. I'm sorry to have worried you both." "Don't be sorry. These things happen. Winter driving is so dangerous." Richard's voice carried that false heartiness people use when they're uncomfortable. "Main thing is, you're okay." "We'll call you in a few days to check in," Valerie added. "Make sure you're feeling better. And Dad? Please, be more careful driving. We can't lose you." After I hung up, I leaned back in my chair and smiled. For the first time in 24 hours. They had passed their test perfectly. The relief in their voices when I suggested postponing Christmas dinner was unmistakable. Richard's immediate concern for the car over my injuries. Valerie's quick acceptance of my story without pressing for details or offering to visit. Most telling of all was their eagerness to end the conversation. Once they'd established I was okay, there were no lingering questions about my condition, no insistence on seeing me in person, just relief that their Christmas was uninterrupted and that I wasn't expecting them to actually care. I pulled out a legal pad and wrote down their exact responses, the pauses, the tonal shifts, evidence of their true nature. I hardly needed more proof, but still it felt good to document their callousness in black ink. The beauty of my fabricated accident was its simplicity. Mill Road truly was treacherous in winter. The old church was a familiar landmark, and black ice was a danger everyone understood. If they ever tried to verify my story, they'd find it perfectly plausible. More importantly, it established a pattern I could use later. I picked up my phone again and scrolled through my contacts until I found what I was looking for. Robert Miller, my lawyer. He'd given me his personal number years ago for emergencies. This qualified. The week after New Year's passed slowly, each day strengthening my resolve. I'd spent hours planning, researching, making lists of assets and legal requirements. Today, I would take the first real step in showing Valerie exactly what her Christmas Eve words were worth. Robert Miller's law firm occupied the third floor of a restored Victorian building downtown. I'd been climbing these stairs for 15 years, usually for routine updates, for ensuring Valerie's security. The irony wasn't lost on me as I pushed open the familiar mahogany door. "Arthur, good to see you." Robert stood from behind his desk, genuinely pleased. We'd worked together since my divorce, and he'd helped me structure every financial safety net I'd built for Valerie. "How are you feeling?" "Valerie mentioned you had a bit of an accident over the holidays." Of course she had, probably making sure everyone knew what a burden her injured father had become. "Much better, thank you. Still a bit shaken, but it gave me time to think about some important matters." "Please sit." He gestured to the leather chair opposite his desk. "What can I do for you today?" I pulled out a folder I'd prepared, placing it neatly on his desk. "I need to amend my will. Specifically, I want to change the primary beneficiary." Robert's eyebrows arched slightly. "That's a significant change, Arthur. May I ask what's prompted this decision?" "The accident made me reconsider my priorities." I kept my voice steady, measured. "I've been thinking about loyalty, about who truly deserves support." I paused, letting him process. "I want to designate the Animal Welfare Foundation as my primary beneficiary, instead of Valerie." The silence stretched for several seconds. Robert leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers, studying my face. "Arthur, this is a very serious decision. Have you discussed this with Valerie? She's been your main concern for years." "No, and I don't intend to." My voice carried the same tone I'd used in boardrooms when deals were non-negotiable. "Animals don't lie to you, Robert. They don't hope you don't make it to important occasions. They appreciate care when it's given." "I understand you're still processing the trauma from your accident, but this isn't about trauma." I leaned forward slightly. "It's about clarity. I've spent 15 years supporting someone who views me as a burden. I'd prefer my resources go to creatures who understand gratitude." Robert studied the notepad in front of him, making notes. "Arthur, as your attorney, I have to ask, are you certain this reflects your true wishes? Major changes after traumatic events are not uncommon, but they aren't always permanent." "Itfu, I have never been more certain of anything." The conviction in my voice surprised even me. "I want this done today, with all the proper documentation and witnesses." For the next hour, we worked through the technical details. Robert explained the requirements, the witness signatures, the notarization, the specific language for the charitable designation. The Animal Welfare Foundation would receive my entire estate. The house, the investments, the retirement accounts, everything I had planned to leave to Valerie. "The foundation does excellent work," Robert admitted as he prepared the documents. "Their shelter programs and wildlife preservation efforts are well respected." He looked at me. "Though I still think you should consider discussing this with your family." My family made their position clear. I signed each page deliberately, watching Robert's assistant witness the signatures. They'll understand my decision soon enough. When the final documents were notarized and sealed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Total control over my own life. No more emergency transfers to Valerie. No more guilt over family obligations. No more pretending that blood kinship guaranteed loyalty or love. "I'll file this with the courthouse next week," Robert said, sliding the copies into a manila envelope. "Arthur, if you change your mind—" "I won't." I stood, briefcase in hand. "Thank you for handling this so efficiently." Walking back to my car, I felt lighter than I had in months. The sealed documents in my briefcase represented more than legal changes. They were proof that I had finally stopped being a victim of my own generosity. Valerie would continue to go about her life, completely unaware that her future had just evaporated. The thought brought me more satisfaction than it should have, but I was past worrying about should and shouldn't. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. It was time to take care of those automatic transfers Valerie took so for granted. The will was just the beginning. Now came the practical, hands-on lessons and consequences. I spent the week after my lawyer's visit going through every financial connection between Valerie and me, mapping out 15 years of dependency she had taken completely for granted. On Thursday morning, I drove to First National Bank with a folder of account documents, the same bank where I'd opened Valerie's college fund 20 years ago, where I'd been a co-signer on her first checking account, where I'd arranged the automatic monthly transfers that had become her financial lifeline. "Good morning, Mr. Vance." Jasmine, my personal banker, smiled warmly. "What can I help you with today?" "I need to close the joint checking account with my daughter and cancel all automatic transfers." I placed the documentation on her desk. "Also, I'd like to change the beneficiaries on my insurance policies." Jasmine's eyebrows arched slightly. "Of course, sir. May I ask if there's been a family situation that prompted this?" "Just updating my affairs after some recent health scares." The lie came easily now. "I want to ensure my assets go where they'll be most appreciated." On Friday afternoon, while Valerie was likely planning her weekend shopping trip, the changes went into effect. The $3,000 monthly transfer that hit her account every 10th of the month, the transfer she'd come to rely on for rent, groceries, Richard's art supplies, simply wouldn't arrive this time. Saturday morning brought the first test. I was sipping coffee when I pictured Valerie at the grocery store, cart full of organic produce and expensive cuts of meat, swiping her card at the register with the same confidence she'd had for years. The call came at 2:17 p.m. "Dad?" Valerie's voice was a mix of confusion and embarrassment. My card was declined at the store. There must be some mistake with the bank." I let it go to voicemail. Voicemail 2, 3:05 p.m. "Hey, it's me again. I called the bank, but they said the account is closed. That can't be right. Can you call me back? Richard's getting really frustrated and we need to get groceries." Voicemail 3, 4:10 p.m. Richard in the background. "Dad, please call me. I don't know what's going on." Richard, "Tell him we can't make rent next week if this isn't fixed." I turned off my phone and went to my study. From my window, I could see 3 houses down the street where Christmas lights were still blinking. The families inside were probably gathering around dinner tables, kids complaining about homework. Normal problems for normal people who didn't hope their parents wouldn't show up for the holidays. By evening, Valerie had left 7 messages. The progression was fascinating. Confusion, then concern, then barely controlled panic as the reality of her situation set in. Richard's voice grew more prominent in the background of each call, his tone shifting from annoyed to accusatory. "Valerie, this is somehow your fault. You must have said something to set him off. I told you to be more careful with him." Sunday brought 11 more calls. I listened to each voicemail with the same methodical attention I had once given to quarterly reports. Valerie's voice grew weaker, more desperate. Apparently Richard had stormed out Saturday night, coming back drunk and angry, blaming her for ruining everything. "Dad, please, I don't understand what's happening. The bank won't tell me anything because of privacy rules." My insurance card isn't working either," Richard says. "Richard says you're punishing us for something, but I don't know what we did wrong." The irony was perfect. She genuinely didn't know what she'd done wrong. 2 weeks of hoping I wouldn't show up for Christmas, laughing at my guilt trips and my homemade cookies, dismissing my sacrifices as unwanted attention, none of it registered as a wrongdoing in her mind. Monday morning's message carried a new note of desperation. "Dad, I'm driving to your house. We need to talk about this face to face. I'll be there around noon." I looked at my phone, then at the calendar. Perfect timing. I'd been patient long enough, methodical long enough. Now it was time for the conversation that would complete Valerie's education and consequences. But first, I had one more call to make. The financial pressure was only the beginning. Now came the consequences for years of cutting corners. I had watched Richard sell his paintings at the weekend markets for 3 years, always cash only, always stuffing wads of bills into his jacket pocket with that smug grin that said he was smarter than the system. On Tuesday morning, I drove to the downtown public library. Their computers offered complete anonymity, no login required, no tracking cookies, just clean access to official government websites, the IRS's official whistleblower page loaded with bureaucratic efficiency, offering forms to report tax fraud and undeclared income. Filing the anonymous tip was remarkably simple. Richard Wilson, and 1247 Maple Street. Unreported cash income from art sales at City Farmers Market and local art fair. Estimated annual undeclared income, $15,000, $20,000. I provided specific dates I'd seen him working the markets, always returning home with thick envelopes of cash that never made it to any tax return. Wednesday brought phase 2. From the same computer, I updated Valerie and Richard's creditors on their changed financial circumstances. No longer supported by a family member. Recent loss of benefactor support. Updated risk assessment recommended. The language was clinical, professional, devastating. Thursday's mail delivery must have been educational. I drove past their house that evening, slowly, carefully, just a neighbor out for a drive. I saw Richard's car in the driveway, Valerie's silhouette pacing in the living room window. The body language was unmistakable. Crisis mode. Activated. Friday morning brought the confirmation I'd been waiting for. Valerie's voicemail came in at 7:23 a.m., her voice thin and strained. "Dad, something terrible is happening. The IRS wants to audit Richard's taxes. They're asking about undeclared income. How could they possibly know about his art sales? And the credit card companies are demanding payment in full. Please, call me back. We need help." Richard's voice rumbled in the background. "Tell him this started right after he cut us off. That's no coincidence." His first spark of awareness. Excellent. The next voicemail, 3 hours later, carried a different tone. "Dad, we came by your house, but you didn't answer. Your car was there. Are you avoiding us? We need to talk about what's happening," Richard thinks. Richard thinks someone is targeting us specifically. Saturday's crisis escalated beautifully. Valerie left 4 messages throughout the day, each one more desperate than the last. Apparently, Richard had spent Friday night calculating the potential fines and interest on the undeclared income. The numbers were sobering. $15,000 in unpaid taxes, plus penalties, plus interest, plus legal fees if he was prosecuted. "Dad, Richard says we could owe $40,000. We don't have that kind of money. We don't have any money. The mortgage company wants updated financial statements. Our credit cards are frozen. How has everything fallen apart this fast?" By Sunday, the paranoia had blossomed into full-blown suspicion. Richard's voice dominated the last message. "Arthur, if you're listening to this, we know you're behind this somehow. No one else knew about my cash sales. No one else had access to our financial information. You're trying to destroy us." Valerie's voice cut in. "Richard, that's insane. Dad wouldn't." But even she sounded uncertain now. The evolution was perfect. From confusion to panic to suspicion to the beginnings of understanding. They couldn't prove anything yet. They couldn't reach me directly. But they were beginning to comprehend the scope of their situation. Sunday night brought my favorite message so far. Valerie's voice was flat now, past the panic, into something colder. "Dad, I don't know what we did to deserve this, but we get it. You're punishing us. Richard's right. This isn't a coincidence. We need to see you face to face and fix this. Whatever it is we did wrong, we'll fix it. But you can't just destroy our lives and not even tell us why." I saved that message, played it twice more. The shift from entitled victim to supplicant was exactly what I had been looking for. They understood the power dynamic now. They understood consequences. They understood that their comfortable life had been entirely dependent on my goodwill. Monday morning would bring the next phase of their education. Financial ruin was just the foundation. Now came the lesson in how quickly a community can turn on you when the right information gets to the right people. I'd spent 15 years observing Valerie's social networks, her colleagues at the salon, the neighborhood book club, the weekend farmers market where Richard sold his amateur paintings. Thursday morning found me back at the public library creating email accounts with carefully chosen names. Patricia, a concerned neighbor. Local resident, Maple Street. Business Watch. Each profile required a different computer session, a different backstory, a different voice. The librarian probably thought I was researching genealogy. The first wave targeted Valerie's workplace. A concerned client. Email to the salon's main address. I'm worried that Valerie's personal situation is affecting the quality of her work. She seems distracted lately, and there are rumors of financial trouble. Just thought you should know. Professional, concerned, devastating. By Friday, the neighborhood phase began. Anonymous posts on the community social media group. Has anyone else noticed all the official mail going to the Wilsons' house? Hope they're not in the kind of trouble that affects property values. The replies started within hours, neighbors suddenly recalling unusual details, speculating about late-night arguments, noting how their car had been repossessed last month. Saturday brought the salon fallout. Valerie called my voicemail at 2 p.m., her voice tight with confusion. Dad, something weird is going on at work. 3 clients canceled today, and Sarah asked me if everything was okay at home. How does everyone know about our problems? We haven't told anyone anything. The neighborhood effects manifested on Sunday. I drove past their house that evening and saw Valerie getting the mail. Mrs. Henderson from next door, who had chatted with Valerie for years, walked straight into her house when she saw her approaching. The message was unmistakable. Pariah status activated. Monday's salon dynamic shifted drastically. Valerie's manager pulled her aside. I knew because she left another voicemail. Dad, Laura wants to discuss my future at the salon. She says clients are expressing concerns about how my personal situation is affecting the business atmosphere. I don't understand how this is happening so fast. Richard's anger hit new levels. His voice dominated Tuesday's message. This is coordinated, Arthur. Someone is systematically feeding information about us. Valerie lost 3 more clients today, and the farmer's market coordinator asked me if I needed to take a break from selling. Who else even knows about our tax problems? Wednesday brought the isolation Valerie had never experienced in her adult life. Dad, nobody's talking to me. The cashier at the grocery store was cold. The mailman wouldn't make eye contact. And someone posted on the neighborhood app about financially unstable residents. I've never been to a community event in my life where I wasn't welcome. This isn't a natural social dynamic. This is deliberate destruction. Thursday's breaking point arrived with surgical precision. Valerie's salon manager officially terminated her contract, citing client retention concerns. But everyone understood the real reason. Her voicemail that night was barely controlled. Dad, I lost my job. Laura said the salon's reputation was being affected by my personal circumstances. Richard is talking about leaving town, maybe staying with his brother in another state until this blows over. The beauty of social pressure was its seemingly organic nature. Every person shunning Valerie felt they were making an individual choice based on reasonable concerns. The accumulation felt like a natural community response rather than an orchestrated campaign. Even Valerie couldn't quite grasp how systematically she had been isolated. Friday night brought the message I'd been waiting for. Valerie's voice was hollow, defeated. Dad, I know you can hear these messages. He's packing. He says I'm toxic now. That being around me is destroying his reputation too. I have no income, no friends, no support system. Whatever lesson you're teaching, I'm learning it. Please, just call me back. But Richard's voice cut in, angry and desperate. Arthur, you win, okay? We get it. We're powerless without you. But this is beyond punishment. This is the systematic destruction of everything we've built. If you want to talk terms, we're ready to hear terms. Finally, they understood this was a negotiation, not a tantrum. Saturday morning would be the perfect time for our first direct conversation in a month. I watched their car pull into my driveway and felt only a cold satisfaction. A month of careful planning had led to this moment. Through my living room window, I could see Valerie's face, pale, desperate, nothing like the confident woman who'd laughed about hoping I wouldn't show up for Christmas. They sat in the car for several minutes, arguing. Richard gesturing angrily, Valerie staring at my house with something close to horror. Finally, they got out, walking up to my front door with the grim determination of people with nothing left to lose. I answered before they could knock. Dad. Valerie's voice broke on the single word. Behind her, Richard looked older, defeated, like a man who'd discovered his easy life had hidden costs. Valerie, Richard, I stepped aside to let them in, noting how they moved. Valerie, hesitant. Richard, aggressive but unsure. I wasn't expecting you. You weren't expecting us? Richard's voice carried a barely contained fury. Everything started falling apart right after Christmas, right after you supposedly had your accident. His eyes narrowed. Funny thing is, your car has been in the driveway every time we've driven by. I held his gaze calmly. I've been recovering. Doctor's orders to rest. What doctor? Valerie's voice was thin, desperate. What hospital? We called everywhere on Christmas Day trying to find you. No one had any record of an Arthur Vance being admitted. The moment stretched between us. I could have kept up the fiction, woven more elaborate lies. Instead, I let the silence speak for itself. You were never in an accident, Valerie whispered. You've been here, this whole time, haven't you? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Richard took a step forward, his artist's hands clenching into fists. You son of a... He caught himself, but just barely. You've been watching us fall apart, enjoying it? I've been observing, I said carefully. That's different. Observing what? Valerie's voice rose. Our bank accounts being closed, my job being destroyed, Richard's tax problems, the entire neighborhood turning on us? You think that's all a coincidence? An interesting theory. I settled into my favorite armchair, forcing them to remain standing. The power dynamic was exactly where I wanted it. What makes you think any of that has to do with me? Valerie's eyes searched my face, looking for something. Guilt, anger, satisfaction. What she found there made her take a step back. The timing, she said slowly. It all started right after Christmas. Right after. Her voice trailed off as the understanding began to dawn. Richard looked between us, sensing currents he couldn't quite grasp. Right after what? Valerie couldn't look away from me. I saw the exact moment the terrible possibility formed in her mind, the memory of Christmas Eve, the conversation she'd had with Richard about hoping I wouldn't show up, the cruel laughter about my guilt trips and my awful cookies. You were there, she whispered, before you called us. You were already there. I remained perfectly still, letting her work it out for herself. What the hell are you talking about? Richard demanded, but Valerie wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring at me in dawning horror, the realization spreading across her face like a stain. You heard us talking? That's why you left. That's why everything started falling apart. The recognition in her eyes was everything I had worked for over the last month. Not just understanding that her life had been systematically destroyed, but knowing why. Knowing that her own words, her own cruelty, had set the entire thing in motion. You heard what we said about you, she continued, her voice barely audible. About hoping you wouldn't make it through the snow, about your guilt trips and your... She couldn't finish. Richard finally understood enough to be afraid. Valerie, what did you say? But I was still watching my daughter, watching her finally grasp the full scope of her situation. She knew now that I had heard every word. She understood that everything that had happened since, the financial cutoff, the tax audit, the social isolation, the loss of her job, had been deliberate, calculated, and personal. You destroyed our lives, she said, but there was no anger in it anymore, just a defeated acknowledgement. I still didn't speak. Sometimes, silence carries more weight than any confession. Valerie's face went waxen as she met my eyes. You hurt us, she whispered again, and I said nothing. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any words. I watched them squirm like bugs in a jar, unaware that the lid had been sealed weeks ago. Their first move was predictably desperate, a consultation with a family lawyer about contesting my will. The irony was exquisite. They were planning to fight a document that no longer existed in the form they imagined. Tuesday morning brought Valerie's first attempt at reconciliation. Key. Her voice on my voicemail carried that false brightness desperate people use when pretending everything is fine. Hi, Dad. I was just thinking we should talk. Clear the air between us. Family is so important, especially after everything we've been through. I didn't call back. Wednesday's message escalated slightly. Dad, I know you're angry, but we can get through this. Richard and I have been doing a lot of thinking about our relationship with you. We want to make things right. The transparency was almost insulting. Every word was calculated to sound loving, while obviously being motivated by her financial desperation. I saved every message, documenting her descent into pathetic manipulation. Thursday brought Richard's voice, attempting an authority he no longer possessed. Arthur, This silent treatment is childish. We're family, whether you like it or not. Valerie is your only daughter, and she deserves better than this. Call us." By Friday, their lawyer had apparently explained the harsh realities of will contests. Valerie's message that night carried the first notes of real panic. "Dad, please, we just need to talk. I know we said some things that hurt you, but everyone says things they don't mean sometimes, can't we? Can't we move past this?" Saturday brought multiple calls. Valerie came to my house twice, ringing the doorbell for 10 minutes straight each time while I watched from the upstairs window. Her body language told the story. Slumped shoulders, nervous pacing, the desperate energy of someone running out of options. "Dad, I know you're in there. Your car's in the driveway. Please, just 5 minutes. We need to discuss our future as a family." Future, as if they had one. Sunday's voicemail revealed the depth of their situation. "Dad, the lawyer says contesting a will costs thousands of dollars we don't have, but he also said family reconciliation is always possible. We miss you. We miss having you in our lives." Monday brought Richard's frustrated return. "Arthur, enough is enough. You've made your point. You're angry. We get it. But this has gone too far. Valerie's been crying for days, and frankly, we're both tired of this game. What do you want from us?" What I wanted. They could never give it back. The Christmas I'd driven through a blizzard to share, the years of believing their gratitude was genuine, the father-daughter relationship that had been the center of my life for 15 years. Tuesday's message was Valerie, alone. Her voice was thin and cracking. "Dad, please, Richard is talking about leaving here for good. He says there's nothing left for us here. I don't want to lose both of you. I know I was wrong, but there has to be a way to fix this." The beauty of her desperation was how it stripped away all pretense. No more casual chats about art supplies or grocery money. No more comfortable assumption that I'd always be there with my checkbook open. Just raw, naked, shameful need. Wednesday brought their most pathetic attempt yet. Valerie showed up at my door, Richard lurking behind her. Both of them dressed in their most respectable clothes, trying to look like responsible adults worth reconciling with. I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. "Dad?" Valerie's smile was so forced it looked painful. We brought you something." She held out a small wrapped package, probably something cheap from the drugstore, a token gesture to grease the wheels of reconciliation. "I don't need anything from you," I said quietly. "We know you're upset," Richard cut in, "but Valerie is your daughter. That has to count for something." I looked at Valerie, not seeing the confident woman who had laughed about hoping I wouldn't make it to Christmas, just a desperate person clinging to the last relationship that could save her from total ruin. "You're right," I said finally. "It does count for something." Their faces lit up with hope. "It counts for exactly what it meant to you on Christmas Eve." And I closed the door. Homelessness would teach them what true dependency meant. I made an anonymous call to their landlord on Tuesday morning, a simple conversation about late payments and creditworthiness. By Thursday, the eviction notice was on their door. I watched Valerie from my kitchen window as she walked to the mailbox that morning. Her movements had changed over the last month, less confident, more hunched, like someone who had learned to expect bad news. When she opened that official-looking envelope, I saw her face crumble from 50 yards away. The call came 2 hours later. Valerie's voice was barely recognizable, thin, broken, desperate in a way I had never heard before. "Dad, please, I know you're angry with us, but we got an eviction notice, 30 days to vacate. I'm begging you, please help us. We have nowhere to go." I let the call go to voicemail. Her next message came that evening. "Dad, I'm not asking for money anymore. I understand. You're done with that. But could you just co-sign for a smaller apartment just until I can get back on my feet? I'll pay you back everything, I promise, every cent." The desperation was perfect, offering to pay back money she had never once considered a debt, treating my years of support like loans she'd somehow forgotten. But even more telling was her complete ignorance of how thoroughly I had destroyed her credit. No landlord would take her application now, co-signer or not. Friday brought Richard's voice, aggressive but laced with panic. Arthur, this is getting ridiculous. Valerie is practically having a nervous breakdown. We need a place to live. You want us to grovel? Fine. We're groveling. Help us find an apartment. Saturday's message revealed the full scope of their crisis. Dad, we looked at 12 places today. Every application was rejected. Our credit it's destroyed somehow. The only places that will even talk to us they're awful, Dad. Really awful. There's a studio apartment above a laundromat that smells like mold, but it's all we can afford, and even that is stretching it. Sunday brought the sound of boxes being packed in the background. Dad, we're moving into that studio tomorrow. Richard is not taking this well. He keeps saying this is all my fault, that I've brought some kind of curse on us. Please, just call me back. I need to hear your voice. Monday night brought the call I'd been anticipating. Valerie's voice was hollow, defeated. Dad, Richard, he left. He said he can't live like this. That being around me was destroying his life too. He took his art supplies and went to another state to stay with his brother. He said he'd call when he figured things out. The beauty of Richard's abandonment was how perfectly it revealed his character. 3 years of living off my generosity, and the moment things got hard, he fled. Valerie was learning what I had known about him all along. He was a leech, not a partner. Tuesday brought her most broken message yet. Dad, I'm alone now, completely alone. I'm sitting in this horrible room with water stains on the ceiling and neighbors who scream all night. I lost my job, my husband, my house, my friends. Everything I had is gone. I don't understand how it all fell apart so fast. The next day, Valerie showed up at my door again. She looked like she'd aged 5 years and 2 months. Thin, pale, wearing clothes that hung loosely on her diminished frame. When I opened the door, she didn't even try to smile. Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. I waited. Are you ever going to forgive me? Because if the answer is no, I need to know. I can't keep waiting, hoping that one day you'll just decide I've been punished enough. The question was more perceptive than I'd expected. She was finally beginning to understand that this wasn't a temporary tantrum, but a permanent change in our relationship. Forgiveness has to be earned, I said carefully. How? Her voice was barely a whisper. Tell me how, and I'll do it. I looked at her standing on my doorstep, homeless, abandoned, isolated, desperate, and I felt no sympathy at all. She still didn't understand that some words, once spoken, could never be taken back. Some laughter, once heard, changed everything forever. That, I said, is something you'll have to figure out for yourself. And I closed the door. The next morning, the lesson she never expected would arrive. When I saw Valerie walk up my driveway, broken and desperate, I knew it was time for my final lesson. She moved like someone who had learned that hope was dangerous, her shoulders hunched against something more than the February cold. I opened the door before she could knock. She looked like she had aged a decade in 2 months, eyes hollow, thin, wearing the same jacket I'd seen her in 3 days ago. Richard's abandonment had left its mark in ways that went beyond simple loneliness. Dad? Her voice was barely a whisper. Please, I need to talk to you. I stepped aside and let her in. She stood in my foyer like a refugee, uncertain and grateful for even this small mercy. I know I don't deserve anything from you, she started, the words tumbling out. I know I've been a terrible daughter, selfish, ungrateful, all the things you must think of me. But I'm begging you. Please, give me another chance. I led her into the living room, letting her settle into the same armchair where she had opened Christmas presents for years. The irony was not lost on either of us. I've lost everything, she continued. Richard's gone. My job is gone. My friends, they won't speak to me. I'm living in this awful place that smells like mold and has bugs crawling out of the walls, but I know I brought this on myself somehow. I don't understand how. The performance was heartbreaking, if you didn't know what I knew. She was trying so hard to be the daughter she thought I wanted, offering contrition and promises of change. still believing that family ties could be mended with enough sincerity. "I want to be better," she said, the tears starting to fall. "I want to be the daughter you deserve. I know. I know it might take time. But maybe we could start small. Maybe I could visit once a week, help with the yard or cook. I want us to be a family again." I watched her cry, feeling nothing but a cold satisfaction. She still didn't understand that some words, once spoken, poisoned everything that came after. "Do you remember Christmas Eve?" I asked quietly. Valerie wiped at her eyes. "Of course. You called. You said you'd been in an accident." "Before that," I said. "Do you remember what you and Richard were discussing? Before I called?" Her face went pale. I could see the moment the memory began to surface, when she started to understand that this conversation was headed somewhere she did not want to go. I don't remember. Exactly. I pulled out my phone, found a file I'd labeled simply December 24th, and set it on the coffee table between us. "Let me refresh your memory." I hit play. Valerie's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "I honestly hope he doesn't make it." Her face went slack-jawed. Richard's voice followed. "Come on, Val, he's your dad." I know, but look at this weather. Maybe the roads are just too bad. We could actually have a Christmas without him hovering over us, asking if we need money, bringing those awful sugar cookies." The laughter that followed was like acid in the air. I watched Valerie's expression crumble as she listened to her own cruel amusement. Just us. No guilt trips about family togetherness. I let the recording play through Richard's agreement. The old man really lays it on thick, always going on about his sacrifices, how he sold his business for you, like we asked him to. Then I stopped it. Valerie was frozen, staring at the phone as if it contained poison. You were there. You heard that." "Every word," I confirmed. "I was standing outside your door, with your Christmas presents, listening to my daughter laugh about hoping I wouldn't survive the drive to see her." "Dad, no, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. I understood it that night, and I've understood it every day since. That conversation showed me exactly what our relationship meant to you, what I meant to you. Valerie was sobbing now, desperate, heaving gasps that shook her entire body. It was just words. People say things they don't mean when they're stressed. I was tired and Richard was being difficult, and you revealed your true feelings about your father, I finished, the man who sacrificed everything for you, who built his entire life around your happiness, who drove through a blizzard because he thought you wanted him there. She tried to speak, but I continued. Everything that has happened since that night, your financial problems, the social isolation, the loss of your job, Richard leaving, it all started because I finally understood what you really think of me. "Please," she whispered, "please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." But I wasn't finished with her education, not quite. It's been 6 months since that last confrontation, and I found something I never expected. Peace. The Animal Welfare Foundation has become more than just the recipient of my estate. It's become my purpose. 3 mornings a week I volunteer at their shelter, feeding dogs whose tails wag with genuine excitement when they see me approach. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, exactly 6 months after Valerie sat in my living room, listening to a recording of her own cruel words. I recognized her handwriting immediately, though it looked more mature now, steadier than the desperate scrawl I remembered from her earlier attempts to contact me. I opened it standing in my kitchen, the coffee cooling on the counter. "Dear Dad," it began, "I don't expect you to answer this letter. I'm not asking for anything, not money, not forgiveness, not reconciliation. I wanted you to know how this past year has changed me. I work at a grocery store now, 40 hours a week on my feet dealing with difficult customers and cleaning up spills. It's honest work. And for the first time in my life, I understand what you meant when you talked about earning something. Every paycheck feels different when you've worked for it instead of just receiving it. I live in a small apartment that I pay for myself. It's not much, but it's mine. Richard never came back from that other state. And honestly, I'm glad. I needed to learn who I am when I'm not depending on someone else's generosity. I know about the will, Dad. Robert Miller told me when I tried to contest it last spring. He explained you'd changed everything back in January, before all of this even started. I understand now that even when I thought I had a safety net, I didn't. You were teaching me to fly without me even knowing it. I'm not the same person who laughed about hoping you wouldn't make it for Christmas. That woman seems like a stranger to me now. I know I can never take back those words, or the years of taking your love for granted. I just wanted you to know. Your lesson worked. I learned. The letter continued for another page, describing her small apartment, her co-workers, the satisfaction she'd found in simple accomplishments. She didn't ask for contact. She didn't suggest meeting for coffee or rebuilding our relationship. She just wanted me to know that she had become someone capable of standing on her own. I read it twice, then I folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer. I felt no urge to reply, no desire to reach out. The lesson had been taught, and it had been learned. That was enough. That afternoon, I drove to the shelter for my regular volunteer shift. The dogs knew my car by now, and I could hear their excited barks as I pulled into the parking lot. Inside, I went through the familiar routine, checking food bowls, refilling water, spending time with the animals who had been there the longest. A German Shepherd mix named Charlie had been at the shelter for 6 months, too old and scarred to attract adopters. He followed me from kennel to kennel, his graying muzzle pushing into my hand whenever I stopped moving. When I sat down to rest, he put his huge head in my lap with total trusting confidence. "You're a good boy, Charlie," I said, scratching him behind the ears. His tail thumped on the concrete floor in pure contentment. This was what love felt like when it wasn't bought or demanded. Charlie didn't care about my bank account or my estate. He wasn't calculating what I could do for him or weighing the benefits of our relationship. He just appreciated kindness when it was offered. As I got ready to leave that evening, Charlie pressed himself against the kennel door, watching me with those intelligent brown eyes. I had started the paperwork to adopt him last week. At 63 years old, I was finally ready to share my home with someone who understood loyalty. Walking to my car, I thought about Valerie's letter one more time. She had learned the value of work, the dignity of independence, the difference between earning and receiving. My methods had been harsh, but the lesson had stuck. Sometimes people need to lose everything to find out what they're truly capable of. I had no regrets about the choices I'd made that Christmas Eve or any day since. Justice wasn't always kind, but it was always fair. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts on this story in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thanks for listening.